Okay, so I welcome David. David is David Dunning, chairman of Corporate Project Solutions. He is co-founder of Deep Team and founder of Business Integrated Governance, or BIG community. David brings over 30 years of experience across strategy, governance, and delivery, and is the originator of the BIG frameworks that focuses on integrating decision-making across strategy, performance, risk, and change. So welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big CIC, it's a community of volunteers. It's all for fun, and anyone's more than welcome to join in.
Well, thank you for participating here and opening a time in your busy schedule for us, right? Well, the topic today is I came across this topic because I've seen many times many organizations, be it uh, for-profit organizations, companies, corporations, or um, NGOs, and even government struggle with this topic. And they many times put in place an effort, a project to structure a strategy management procedure process, right, in the organization. And they run it 6 months, a year. And throughout this time, they feel that they lose momentum, right? And this loss of momentum, sometimes they even abandon the project, which is very critical for the organization because if you don't have a structured strategy management process, uh, it it can compromise, the future of the organization. So what I hear when I see this happen many times is, oh, we didn't have engagement from the team with this process. And then I started questioning myself, right? Engagement, but does that mean that it's optional, to do your part in the strategy and corporate performance? Or should that be compliance? Like it's mandatory? And if it's compliance, against what rule, against what policy or procedure, right? And I understand the importance of engaging people, but how to do it as well. So all of these topics I want to explore with you, David.
Yeah, yeah.
Before I jump in, though, I want to ask our audience if they have, how formal is their strategy management process? Um, so do they have a policy uh, with a structured process behind it? Like who does what when, very well established with responsibilities and so on? Or do they just have a generic policy, or they deal with it in an informal way, everyone does their own way? Or do they not have a strategy management process? So a poll must have popped up in your screens. Please answer and let's see how your feedback on this is coming in. So we're having here our first answers, and um, basically focused on, yes, we have a policy and a standard process. So not just a policy, but also how to do it. And we address the matter informally. That is, everybody knows it has to be done, but there is no um, document, stamped by top management saying this has to be done and there is consequence if you don't do it, right? So Some, about half has a very formal structure, and half deal with it informally. Is this your perception as well, David? When you see your client base and the companies that you've been through?
Uh, yes. The what I'd fully agree with there is nobody saying they do not have a strategy management process. Everybody manages strategy to some degree. I guess that the what changes is how regimented and how built around a process and a life cycle that is. 50% having a policy and a standard, I'd say that's high. The extent of a policy or a standard I've seen is that we will do strategy and we will revisit it in the first quarter of the year, and that's about as formal as a policy gets. So people having a full policy, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I'm also impressed by the answers here. I usually don't see that frequently, having a structured policy and the process of how it's done in a formal way in that many organizations. And I actually miss it sometimes. But let me ask you, David. So, employee participation in execution of the strategy should be mainly about compliance or like mandatory and against like some procedure, or should it be based on engagement and promoting motivation in the employees, or both, a mix? How do you see that? And why is this balance sometimes off, you know, in some corporations?
Well, I think it depends on the culture of your company. If your company is fun, then you don't use compliance very much. Compliance is just what you use it to make sure that what you want to do finally does get done. But I guess if we're looking to use tools, we want to make everything that we do in a business fun. So if we can enjoy not only developing strategy, implementing strategy, and delivering strategy, those of us that do it and participate in it will not only produce better results, but will have a lot less friction in doing so, and we'll be happy people. We'll win all of the employee satisfaction awards. For me, compliance is what we have to do to finalize what needs to be done. But if we can engage people, that's the best. But having said that, that doesn't mean to say that we don't need structure. And I think we can still be very engaging, and that should be the first approach. I think with anything that's strategic, to be engaging. But we do need structure. We do need a backbone for how we're going to work, the rhythm for how we're going to do it, and the information sets that we're going to use to make our fun strategy execution of strategy delivery actually work. That's my point there. But the other thing I'd push back on is that do you think that compliance and engagement, it's almost a false dichotomy? It's almost a false choice. In my opinion, we absolutely need both. And I think that if an organisation is trying to make everything just wonderful fun with no compliance, or is trying to tell everybody exactly what to do and do it this way, neither of those two approaches is going to work. We have to find a balance. That's my
Yeah,
view anyway.
that's a very good point. And how much, I mean, so we're talking about organizational culture, right?
Yeah,
Some cultures tend more towards formalism, and some cultures, especially more innovative segments of the market, tend toward more just getting people involved, putting a target like way ahead, and just expecting people to align towards it. But most cultures are in the middle, I
yeah,
think, right? Most cultures are not that formal, and bureaucratic, but also not that loose, right?
Yeah.
So this ends up being a cultural issue. How much have you seen HR get involved in establishing this balance? Because what I perceive is usually there is an area, a department that deals with strategy and performance, right? And most of the people here in our webinars and our communities are from these departments. But if it's a cultural issue, uh, I imagine HR should be leaning into it as well and guiding, how to establish this balance and so on. In practice, does HR get involved in this or rarely?
Oh, I think HR should be very much involved in every part of strategy. Well, there's the strategic elements of strategy delivery for one thing, but if we need to engage people, then HR has to be involved. At a company where I've worked in the past, we've made it an absolute key part of our year to have a start of the year kickoff. So we make sure that HR arranges an offsite. We all get together. It's fun, but it's our moment where we can the business leaders can share their challenges. They can take feedback. So it's very much an HR managed process. And it also means that we can then involve people in the responses to the strategy expectation. So instead of handing people a plan with a straightforward go do, we can engage them in a, well, this is your part of the strategy. How would you approach it? Here are some boundaries, but how would you approach it? And what can we put into your objectives that will allow us to give you the pay rewards and the bonuses that you deserve for your commitment and professionalism, that also meets the needs of what we need to do as a business. So to me, HR is the facilitator between strategy and people, but it's also the facilitator between objectives needed from the strategy and what people can get a reward on at the end of the year as well. So
I see.
that's my view of how those two fit together.
Perfect. And is that something common, or is this organization you work with an exception? How do you see that?
Well, if I'm honest, it's actually my organisation, so I think it's pretty exceptional. But in terms of what I think HR involvement is with most organisations I've worked with, it feels that line managers work with their staff to work out what those objectives are, and there's not necessarily a huge connection with what business performance targets are or what the strategy is and what people are targeted to do. And to
Mhm.
my mind, that's a very important gap to bridge, and that's something that is missing out of the strategy implementation, but also missing out of our diligence in HR to make sure that we target people not just on what they'd like to do and what a line manager wants them to do, but is part of what the organisation wants them to do as well.
Okay,
Um,
perfect. Um, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about engagement and how to do it, but
yeah,
I'd like to turn a little bit on the formal side, right?
yeah,
So if we're talking about compliance or a formal process or a formal policy slash process, right? Um, what should this part look like? Like, what should this uh, uh, formal document policy process contain, right?
yeah.
What aspects of strategy management should be there? And yeah, uh, how do you formalize it and to what extent, right?
Well, firstly, just a rhetorical question. So many people I speak to don't realise there is, in fact, an institute of strategy professionals. So there is a body of knowledge. The Institute, I think it's the Strategy Body of Knowledge version 3. So there's some guidelines and some standards. Um, there's a formal process, a set of goodness in there. But just explaining what I'm going through right now, our process is an annual one, but with a quarterly review. So our strategy is dynamic. So we have to write down and get consensus on what we're going to do, not to the nth degree, but certainly in terms of direction. And it's important that we all negotiate and understand what that is at a high level, and then cascade that down to lower levels for them to respond to, and get that cascade and that structure to work, and to retouch that once a quarter so that we can maintain it and keep it well looked after. So I think it's important to have that life cycle and that rhythm to make sure you address the things that you need to be creative about, and also give you the chance to understand what other commitments and obligations you have within your business that you have to work around, and to listen for new and changed business circumstances. I have either I make more profit so I can invest more, or I have a loss so I have to save some cost. These are all things that I need to maybe tweak and adjust my strategy with throughout the year, not just at the start of some massive long 5-year planning cycle that some people could possibly visualize.
Okay, so from time to time, the KPIs, the targets, the projects, everything has to be reassessed, be it because you're not meeting the targets, and I imagine that has a greater frequency, maybe monthly you're assessing the targets there and
Yeah,
replanning whatever necessary, and maybe quarterly or even with a longer period, assessing the strategy itself, if the strategy is being effective or you need to rethink the strategy, right?
yeah.
So should these periods, this frequency be established in the corporation policy, like, oh, every month this meeting should happen where the department will assess its results, it will report this information to the direct manager that will do a different meeting all the way to C-level, and establishing like the um, framework of this meeting
Yeah,
and
yeah.
these meetings. Should this be standardized within a corporation, or how does it work?
I think so. Well, firstly, are we making battleships or are we making ice cream? So
Mhm.
the cadence that we manage our strategy on depends on the frequent on the speed that our business rotates at. If we're making software, we maybe meet once a week. Who knows? But I think there are two parts to what we need to cover. And I think there's what we call a performance part, and I think there's a strategy part. I think the performance part reviews what have we done, what have we achieved, what's the status, what are the issues, and we look backwards. But with the strategic part, or at least the looking forward part, we need to look into, so is the outturn going to look good? Are my objectives going to get hit? Is this in the context of acceptable risk? And it's not just this one entity that we need to consider, but everybody who has an aspect of strategy is going to be having this conversation too, and therefore that needs to be compiled. So maybe there's a cadence here, which is a once a year, do a big overhaul on your strategy. On a quarterly basis, reflect on your performance, but look forward onto what next. But then scan for what objectives and targets and opportunities and threats are changing a little bit beyond the immediate window, so you can
Mhm.
change course and re-steer if you need to. I think there's a difference between plan and strategy. Plan is we do X, Y, Z. Strategy is this is the journey we take. So we need to keep the journey we take slightly separate from the plan bit. That's my view.
And I imagine both should be addressed in like a policy or process, right? So you said it varies if you're building a battleship or a software, right? The
Yeah,
frequency where you have to reassess that, but whatever frequency, it should be planned to do so, right? To
yeah,
reassess not only the performance, but also the strategy.
I think so. I mean, what I think's really interesting is I draw diagrams sometimes. A diagram which is culture, which is this
Mhm.
is how we do things around here. That's one circle, and another circle is this is how we're meant to do things around here. So can we get it so that the culture of how we do things around here and the circle of how we actually do things around here overlaps? Can we set up a rhythm and a cadence and a wish for people to do things that is the same as what they're meant to do? That's the art, I guess. So yeah,
Yeah.
that culture and operation is if we get that to coincide, then we're laughing.
And what are the biggest obstacles you find in getting these two circles overlapping, right? What are the biggest barriers that you've found in your experience throughout the organizations you've been through?
Um, Barriers. So how do these things arise? Like they arise, I think, because of lack of leadership to begin with. It's
Mhm.
if we don't have the leadership which inspires us and motivates us to run towards the flag and run up the hill, and or give us the way to run up the hill. If we don't have the examples set for us, we will go and make our own examples. We'll go and work it out for ourselves. And if we're not careful, we'll all work it out for ourselves independently, and then we'll find that we're all doing different things in different ways all over the organization. And then when we try and do something strategic, which goes across the organization and connects with all of us, because we're all doing things differently, it's chaos.
Mhm.
So
So
so I think if we have
leadership is fundamental, right? To establish the rhythm, the culture, and so on.
rhythm, culture, tone from the top, and I think a really important part of this is accountability. It's can if in many organizations I've spoken to, they're very quick to hold managers to account with either with bonuses or with rebukes. But for strategic objectives, are they always as visible as they should be? Is it always clear who owns which strategic driver? Do our executives take put their name onto difficult objectives as readily as they'd like a manager to put their name on a slightly lower down level of objective? So for me,
Mhm.
tone from the top. If you're going to insist on accountability to execute the strategy with at the lower levels, then our leadership must take accountability and be visible at taking accountability for the objectives further up the chain. I think that's really impactful.
So accountability is essential on every level, but it comes from the top, right?
The
Uh,
culture, yeah, the willingness,
yeah.
the willingness to accept it, but also to be fair about setting it. So when we expect somebody to be accountable, we give them the conditions within which they can achieve. We avoid the culture that exposes people to threat. We make the culture of success, not of failure. So accountability is, I think, a massive enabler that underpins effective strategy delivery.
So David, I'd like to have a second survey with our audience. This time talking about balance between, formal compliance, strategy execution, and engagement and motivation side of getting people involved. So, in your company, how is the balance between compliance and engagement in the strategy management process? Uh, a pop-up should be on your screen right now. Um, let's see how the answers come in. So it's leaning more toward engagement so far, but answers are still coming in. Yeah, so strong engagement with little compliance. Okay, balanced off a little bit right now. A little bit more compliance there. So a couple of companies, strong compliance with little engagement. So more formal a way of doing things. And you have a policy, a process to back that up, right? But also we have quite a few here with strong engagement with little compliance. So a more informal process. And this kind of reflects the initial question as well, right? We have kind of this two um, cultures or two clusters forming here. More formal compliance-driven process and a more engagement-driven process, right? So, David, with that in mind, um, especially with the younger generations, we're talking like Gen Zs, right? Uh, they are very, I don't know if this is a correct term, but um, compliance resistance or rule resistance. I don't know if resistance is the correct term, but they kind of require to be motivated or engaged or purpose driven and very much less doing because it's a corporate policy. It's not a good argument with this generation, right? So how can they get involved in strategy management? And what are the good practices for uh, getting people engaged with this process? How can we do it?
Well, I understand a little bit of what you're saying. I've got two sons that are in their early 20s, and they're
Mhm.
starting their professional careers. And compliance has never been really a word that they particularly appreciate or understand.
Mhm.
I say that as a proud father. But I do think when we use the word strategy and we make it sound big and difficult and inflated and senior, and inaccessible. And it is true that I guess a lot of early development of strategy is done using the wisdom of experienced people at senior levels, so that they can't necessarily get involved in the early stages of evaluating opportunities and threats, understanding business goals, understanding compliance and imperatives. But we can certainly take the mystique out of the process that gets our strategic expectations and drives them or helps them into the business. Let's take the mystique out of what this strategy
Mhm.
stuff is. Let's make it accessible. Let's explain the life cycle. Let's explain to people how this is going to work. Let's explain the timings of when their involvement is going to happen. Let's truly ask them to participate and take ownership for pieces rather than take tasks to do. Let's be clear on what strategy means as much as we can. We can't explain everything straight away because it's strategy and we're not going to know some of it for a longer period. But I think it's also a lot to. I think we'll also get a lot of traction with younger people if we're clear on what is expected, and that there's a fair way that we manage accountability through the business. So if we're asking my son to take on a package of work and we're going to hold them to account, we make sure that the culture of accountability is fair and it works the same for everyone. And if we're going to hold somebody to account, I mentioned about their accountability. Let's be clear on prioritization. Let's explain how prioritization works, and if that's based on merit and data rather than emotion and somebody's specific will, then that'll again have a lot of traction with younger people. At least that's, as an older person, that's my opinion of what younger people think. Maybe they can
So,
tell me if I'm wrong.
yeah. If we have, Gen Zs on our audience, please put in your comments here and let's see if this is uh, resonating with you guys. Uh, so I talked a little bit about being purpose driven, and I think that's one of the issues that gets people engaged, right? So how can you um, show that the work that they're doing, that their part is important in the whole, right? And their part impacts strategic objectives and their overall strategy. How can you show their purpose within this framework to get them motivated?
Yeah. Um, and to my mind, this is quite straightforward. But it's I think it's difficult for an organisation. Can we, as an organisation, as we start to develop our strategy and develop the objectives related to that strategy, as we start to do this and develop the measures for those objectives, can we break that down into an information model that they can access? Can we make that breakdown of objectives and what they're accountable for and who else is accountable for what? Can we make that hierarchy, that those interconnections, that accountability, that map visible? And can that be the vehicle through which we maintain that? Can we all work off English phrase? Can we all sing off the same song sheet here? Can we provide a backbone for strategy delivery, which makes it easy for us? It's easy and simple, and promotes that equitability, the accountability, and so that everyone can see what's happening and going on. As far as confidentiality of our strategy permits, I guess.
That's another topic I want to dive into, but before I go there, I just want to reinforce that what you're saying is that it should be visible, right? If I'm doing a work, be it on an operational front line, and I'm have a target of being efficient in this work that I'm doing, I should be able to understand that this efficiency impacts, some greater performance that is makes an objective feasible and that
Yeah.
makes the whole strategy work. So this being able to trace back is critical and for projects as well, right? So if this project doesn't go forward, what's the consequence in the overall strategy? That should be clear somehow, right?
I think that's really motivational. I mean, there may well be things that my line manager asks me to do for his team's local performance, and those things might well be in my objectives for the year. But it's I think it's inspirational, motivational, if those strategic objectives and how I contribute them get into my objectives too. And can we have that line of sight? Is it really, if in any case we write all this stuff down into documents, can we maybe just share that a little more easily and enable us all to see how we fit, or at least be confident that everything is in this framework that does fit, even if we're not allowed to see some of the things because they're sensitive.
Yeah. So let me put a new topic in here. That is, we haven't talked about compensation, right? And variable compensation and the use of this tool that is variable compensation as a driver for strategy execution, for getting people engaged and involved, um, not because you're just selling them final purpose, but because they have a personal interest in it, because they will get a bonus if performance is going well and strategy is being executed. How do you see this, let's call it tool of creating bonuses aligned with deliveries, strategy deliveries and performance deliveries, uh, as something to be used to get people motivated and involved?
Personally, I think it's absolutely vital. And I think if we can, as leaders, we should make the portfolio of rewards for a person be a mix of what they get paid, some larger bonuses if they do great jobs, but lots of little benefits and bonuses if they do small pieces of work. So in my opinion, as long as it's not too complicated to set up, then we should use these levers to motivate as much as we can. I think employees like them if they feel it's possible to achieve them. They like them. If they feel it's impossible to achieve them, then it's a very negative effect. But instead of just raising salary, I think offering bonuses is a great way to motivate and create a buzz. But the only problem is, of course, as we know with salespeople, you if you reward and bonus something, then that is what people will do. So the design of the bonuses related to the objectives needs to be very careful, because if you bonus something, then people will focus on it and drop other
Uh,
things. So be careful.
yeah, it's a big force towards something that will, if not well designed, it can have pretty important consequences, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
go or too much on something that you're not well prepared for measuring, and
yeah.
it can have side effects that unpredictable side effects. So it's something that has to be done with lots of care, right? And experience, like doing it
I,
small, checking if it worked, then scaling up. In my opinion, if I've seen a few times companies try to establish a variable compensation, but go from 0 to 100 in 1 year,
yeah.
right? And it's pretty risky as well.
And I've seen government agencies where that whole culture, the idea of bonusing, it's just so far off what their norms are. Yeah, there's yes, but bonusing would probably work best amongst those organisations, but their culture has no budget for bonuses. When in fact probably it would produce greater employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and produce greater results with less sickness if a bit of bonus got
We're
sprinkled
there.
around every so often.
Yeah, great. So I would like you, David, to get us some examples. I know you've been through many organizations and have seen, different cultures and how these organizations balance between, this more formal process and just engagement. Uh, could you talk to us a little bit about how to balance these two and your experience on this? Different, aspects and think different cultures, how do they deal with it?
Yeah, well, the first thing for me is I think we need structure and backbone to our strategy delivery. It's boring and it's dull. You might call it compliance, but I'd phrase it as structure and backbone. So for me, it's essential. We have to have something that's the structure and backbone. Otherwise, we can't. Our skeleton is floppy and
Mhm.
loose. But unless we can persuade to actually do things and excite them, then whatever structure we have, they're not going to do it. So I think almost compliance and engagement are a false dichotomy. You have to have both. You really do. I've seen, and the reason why I think this is, for example, I was chatting to a person from a government agency only a week or so ago. They were talking about their organization strategy, how it's inspirational, it's fantastic, it's got some great themes in it, it's really good. But they kind of just published that and let their departments and functions interpret it. And those departments and functions would interpret it, and they'd go away and produce plans to do things. And they would have some fantastic professionals go away and produce some fantastic work. And those fantastic professionals would digress into things that they found interesting. And 6 months later, the strategy that the senior folks had put a lot of work into was nothing like what people were doing within the structures, and had become even less like what people were doing in the structures because they'd started doing their own things. So they'd been left to engage in what they thought the strategy was, but because there'd been no implementation, there was no backbone, it had now digressed far away from what was expected. So that's a real example. That's a very large agency that has had what it thought was a great approach to strategy, but just disintegrate because it balanced engagement over compliance and structure. And of course, the other end of the scale is that we try and plan too much, and we try and to build and define too much, and we simply disenfranchise or bore or over instruct people within our organisations, and we give them no space. They get no job enjoyment at all. And I see that in cultures as well. So there are we definitely have this. Definitely has to be balanced, and I think it's all about how our leadership approaches and operates implementation of strategy to make sure we get the balance right. We can't just throw things into delivery and hope that they'll have the right balance of compliance and culture. We have to think about how that middle bit works for our organization. And I think a lot of organisations miss that piece out. They just don't think that it's needs to be done, but I think it does.
Perfect. Okay. Any other comments you'd like to bring into the webinar, David?
Well, I mean, your perspective on this, you've used the word compliance, but for me, how I'd phrase this is backbone. What we're talking here about the absolute necessity for a backbone for strategy to delivery, to help us structure, help us operate, give us that rhythm. I mean, you're from a technology background. That surely you've got some experiences to share as to how you can get technology to work well in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. Technology can help a lot in keeping the cadence of the process going, right? And giving this line of sight that we talked about. So technology, I think it's the third leg, right? You have the process, so how it's supposed to be done. You have people in the equation, so if they're not engaged and motivated, they will just do it for compliance, as you said, but eventually this will even burn down the process because if they're not satisfied, they can even leave the company and go somewhere else, right? And the third part of this balance, I guess, would be, in my opinion, technology, because it can lower the hurdle to get this process going and get people, make the process less bureaucratic in a way that it flows better within the organization. So there are a few topics you mentioned here in your talk that I can show how technology can help in those topics specifically. So you mentioned line of sight. We talked a little bit about bonus and cadence, right? Keeping the rhythm of the process going. So I can show the software actually in a few minutes. Let me share my screen with you, and we can see how this can be done in practice, right?
Because this stuff can be all in documents, can't it? But if it's in documents, it's buried. We can't share it so easily. And we
Yeah,
can't tell when it's changed. We can't control it. We can't report it. It's in documents. It's buried and unusable.
exactly. And it's not collaborative, it's um, not dynamic, right? So, line of sight. Let's say that I got into strategy management module from our platform, and I have here a strategy map, right? In balanced scorecard format, but it could be any format, doesn't really matter. And I can see the objectives here and what's going well, what's not going well. And I can dive into this and go uh, dive deep into the KPIs, projects, and risks that are behind this strategic objective. So I clicked on add value to the shareholder, and I have a KPI here, EBITDA. I have a project portfolio, and I have a risk and an OKR, objective key result. So let's dive here into this KPI, EBITDA. I can drill down this KPI into, OpEx, revenue, and other risks, and keep uh, diving until I get into the operational risks. Sorry, the operational KPIs where things are going on in the front line. So if I'm responsible for this KPI, revenue British Columbia, I know that this KPI impacts this other KPI that impacts EBITDA, that impacts my strategic objective, add value to the shareholder, or whichever objective you may have here in your strategy map. Same thing for projects and risks and so on. So you can actually see your contribution to the whole, even if you're working in the front line, right? So this line of sight, usually when you say line of sight, we're referring to top down, right? The top management seeing what's going on down there. But in this case, it's people that are in the front line being able to see um, the consequence of their work, right? I'm just changing the format here so that I can see the details of this KPIs and how they build up all the way to the strategic objectives, right? In the strategy map, for example. Um, Another topic is that we talked about as a means to get people involved is bonus, right? Compensation and variable compensation. So here, based on that same set of KPIs that originated from strategy and from the key performance metrics of the organization, you can build your own, or the company can build the scorecards for the employees, and they can follow up on their own personal scores. That is a score based on the weight of each KPI or project that was established and their performance. So how many points that they got for this performance and why, there's a curve that translates performance into points, and the the accumulated points is, the points I got times the weight. So the idea is I can follow up on my future bonus throughout the year and actually uh, adjust my efforts towards these particular KPIs and projects while trying to optimize my bonus in the end of the year. So this is a way to get people involved, like that we talked about, and engaged and motivated. And I can also see, everybody that is a direct report to me and their bonus, their scorecards, and so on. So
Yeah.
this is a second topic of how that we talked about on how to get people engaged. And the third one is cadence, right? The rhythm of getting things done. And this is many times done via meetings, right? So I can establish all of the meetings for the organization, be it monthly meetings or weekly meetings, as you mentioned, and I can follow up on this integrated with your Outlook, your Teams, or whatever, and check all of my uh, where I'm participating in these meetings, right? So you can click on the meetings and just see who's participating, what are we going to discuss, what's the um, presentation for this particular meeting. So you don't have to redo presentations every meeting. It's just once you create the structure of that meeting, like this monthly performance meeting, I can just click on it and begin my meeting. It's slide 1 of 12 in this case, and you can just move forward and keep the cadence going for the structure of the meeting itself, not just the frequency of when we do this particular meeting. So there are a bunch of other tools. I'm not going to show everything because the idea is not to demo the software as a whole, but just address some of the points that we talked about and how we can engage people and translate a policy and a process standard into a software so that it'll, help support this process throughout the year.
I like that stuff because the line of sight is, to me, it's non-negotiable that if you're looking to deliver strategy, you have to have that line of sight. The bonus stuff I think is a great way to engage and motivate. Might create some fun to maintain those things, but absolutely you're then connecting people to strategy, and that's fantastic. And the tools you talked about with respect to cadence, it's making the meetings operate. It's you providing a backbone then to encourage the rhythm to happen. And I guess you're pulling information together that's suitable for those meetings, so making it easy. So three really crucial things for strategy delivery, in my opinion. There.
All right. Well, hope it helps, right? Uh, we're almost at the end of our time here, David. I'd like to thank you very much for your participation. And if anyone wants to have a one-on-one talk with you, how can they reach out to you, David?
Well, I can share my contact details, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm David Dunning at LinkedIn, or my email address is david.dunning at big-cic.org. We can share those details if they'd like to. But yeah, the LinkedIn, that's me. And if you search for the business integrated governance, the big CIC, the body of knowledge we've shared that reflects what we've been discussing, that's for the that's public domain, and they can consume that and contact me through that as well. So.
Perfect. I put your email here on the chat. If someone wants to reach out, feel free to do so. And with us as well, if you want to get to know a little bit about our platform and how our platform supports corporate processes like strategy management, risk management, people assessment, and development, please reach out. It's going to be a pleasure talking to you one-on-one, right? And David, once again, thank you very much. It was great having you. Oh, before our audience goes, please, if take a few minutes, a couple of minutes to fill in our feedback form. The feedback form is here on the chat, and let us know how we can do this better. Right. Thank you again, David. See you next time.
Thank you. It's fun. Ciao for now.
All right. Thanks. Bye.